Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
We can dance, everybody look at your hands. We can dance, everybody's taking the chance. Safe to dance, oh it's safe to dance. Yes, it's safe to dance.
Hello and welcome to episode 245 of the Situational Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to help improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SAMatters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. This is the last episode for 2018, and I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota, having just been off the road for a week to celebrate Christmas with my family. I'll be back on the road next Wednesday, heading again to Fort McMurray, Alberta, to continue the training for the oil refinery operators at Syncrude Canada. Once this visit's complete, we will have trained 678 oil refinery operators and 92 first responders. If you missed last week's episode, you may want to go back and give it a watch. We had a visit from the jolly old St. Nick himself, Santa Claus, who shared 12 ways to improve situational awareness, a takeoff on the 12 days of Christmas. If you like the show, please consider subscribing. If you listen to the audio, it's SAMatters Radio on whatever device you listen to. If it's video, it's SAMatters TV show on YouTube. And if you find it valuable, please consider giving it a rating or a review. Your ratings and reviews help others to find the show. Okay, in today's feature segment, we're going to sit in on a short part of the classroom program in Fort McMurray where I was training the oil refinery operators. But before I do that, I want to say thanks to everybody who took advantage of the offer for the discount enrollment for the SAMatters Online Academy. It was a great deal. You can enroll up to 100 members for a flat fee of $2,999. This special offer expires December 31st, and I've talked about the benefits of the Online Academy in previous episodes, so I'm not going to say any more about it now. If you want to learn more, just visit the SAMatters.com website and click on the green box on the right side of the homepage labeled Online Academy. If you want to enroll a group or if you have questions, just send me an email at support@richgasaway.com or give me a call, 612-548-4424. All right, let's jump into our feature segment, a visit to the SAMatters program, where I am talking about how the brain forms understanding. The jigsaw puzzle gets assembled at the location in your brain where you have consciousness. If this part of your brain were ever damaged from injury or disease, you might live in a permanent coma, never again able to be awake. So it's a pretty important part of the brain. It is also the place in the brain where you form your situational awareness. And I'm going to show you where it happens. It happens right here on your magical, mystical Etch-a-Sketch. Every one of us has an Etch-a-Sketch inside of our brain, and it truly is a magic screen. Now, I'm going to talk about what happens on the Etch-a-Sketch over the balance of the morning, and I don't want to make the assumption that everybody knows what an Etch-a-Sketch is. I made that mistake once. I was in a program and I was talking about the Etch-a-Sketch, and I was about 20 minutes into it when one young man, about 18 years old, raised his hand and he said, "What's an Etch-a-Sketch?" And I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming. I guess because I had one as a kid, I guess I just assumed everyone did, but that's not the case. So I had to explain to him what the Etch-a-Sketch is, and I said, well, it's a little plastic box about the size of a book, and it's got a screen on it, and when you turn that knob on the left, there's like a little ink pen on the inside that draws up and down lines, and it leaves the line behind like it's drawing a picture. And when you turn the little knob on the right side on the bottom, that little pen on the inside of the screen goes horizontal, left and right. And if you get really good at it, turning both in the left and right knob at the same time, you can draw some pretty amazing pictures on that Etch-a-Sketch. And when I got done explaining it, he said, oh, I get it. It's like a paint program for old people. And I wanted to chop him down, but there was like 300 of them, so I'm like a little outnumbered here, so I'll just laugh. Oh, that's so funny. Paint program for the old people. Everything you see, hear, feel, taste, and smell travels down these 5 highways and lands on the Etch-a-Sketch as a picture. That's why I use the analogy of jigsaw puzzle pieces. That's why I use the analogy of the Etch-a-Sketch. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. If your brain does not draw a mental picture of the input, you will not understand what you're seeing, or hearing, or smelling, or tasting. Everything gets drawn as a picture. And you might say, well, I totally understand how what I see draws pictures, but how can what I smell draw a picture? There's nothing to see, it's just a smell. Here's how it does it. When I come down the elevator this morning for class at my hotel, the elevator doors opened up in the lobby. Ding! Oh, we're having bacon this morning. Now, I didn't see the buffet. I just smelled the bacon. Now, how did I know that smell was bacon? Because my brain had to go up into memory and actually bring a picture of bacon out of memory, bring it down onto my Etch-a-Sketch so that my brain could say that smell matches that picture. If I have no memory of that smell, there'll be no picture, and therefore I'll be confused by what that smell is. Everything gets drawn as a picture. Now, there's kind of an ironic lesson here for all of us. You as plant operators, me as a first responder. We kind of share a common theme here. And that is, I'm sure that you've probably been told, as I know I as a firefighter have been told, that H2S smells like rotten eggs. That got me wondering. How many of us have ever actually smelled a rotten egg? You don't have to answer. But I'm going to guess many of us have not. But somewhere in our memory is something that matches up to something that we would think would smell like a rotten egg. So in our memory is this picture of a rotten egg that when it comes down onto our sketch pad, it's supposed to align to some certain smell. It's kind of a weird thing when most of us have never actually ever smelled what truly is a rotten egg, but yet we have some memory or belief of what a rotten egg would smell like. And that matches up to what we would understand that H2S would smell like. When you're carrying on a conversation with somebody, their words draw pictures on our minds. Now, we know this already. You might be carrying on a conversation with somebody. Say is it, how do you pronounce your first name?
Mahmoud.
I'm carrying on a conversation with him. I'm explaining something very complex to him. And as I'm explaining that complex concept to him, I might say to him, do you see what I mean? And if he does, he might say in reply, Rich, I see what you're saying. Or if he doesn't, he might say, I don't see what you mean here. You do literally see the meaning of the words. The Etch-a-Sketch draws pictures of what those words mean visually. And if we don't understand, we won't see what someone is saying to us. This becomes a really important piece of information when it comes to periods of high vulnerability, because we depend heavily on communications to help us to understand what's going on. Information from the field to the panel, from the panel to the field. And it's very important that what somebody says to us over the radio is said in a way that we actually can visually understand what they're saying. And if somebody says something from the field back to the panel, that the panel can actually visualize the meaning of what the person is saying. Because if we can't visualize it, we don't understand it. Now, there's two kinds of puzzle pieces. This is where it can get a little bit complex, so you've got to hang with me for just a moment as I explain this. The first kind of puzzle piece are what are called positive puzzle pieces. This is anything that you can see or hear or feel or taste or smell. So if, like in this room, if I were to say, what are the positive puzzle pieces giving me the indication that we are in a classroom today? Well, obviously, students, tables, chairs, computer, projector, screen, speakers, flip charts. Those are all the positive indicators that we are in a class today. But there's a second kind of puzzle piece called negative puzzle pieces. And you can't see them. And you can't hear them because they're not present. They're missing information. And you might be thinking, how could missing information be valuable in the formation of my situational awareness? I totally understand how the things that I can see and hear are important puzzle pieces. But if it isn't there, if it isn't happening, it doesn't matter. Because it isn't happening. It can matter, critically. You see, the more experience you acquire on the job, in training, in simulations, the more knowledge you have stored in your memory of dealing with those problems. And with that stored experiences, when you find yourself in a period of high vulnerability, with expert level knowledge, you can not only see what is happening, but you literally can see in your mind what isn't happening, but should be happening. I see that, and I see that, and I see that, but because I don't see that happening, that's a puzzle piece. Because I didn't hear that said, that's a puzzle piece. In the mind of an expert, missing information in a situation can be as valuable as much as the present visual or audible information. But only experts are able to do this. People who are new on the job, they don't have enough stored experiences yet to know what they're not seeing and that it has some value. So, how long does it take to acquire expert knowledge? How long would it take before someone would be considered expert level experience and knowledge base in their given profession? There are out there in the world people that are so geeky that they are experts on expertise. They spend their whole life studying what does it take to acquire expert knowledge. They study medicine. What does it take for somebody from the time they start medical school all the way through residency, and then are practicing medicine? How long before they actually are considered expert knowledge in their field of medicine? Or musicians, or athletes. They study all these different professions. The reason I have this slide in here is because I was visiting a company once where I was interviewing the factory floor workers. We'll just call them operators, the ones who work on the factory floor. The factory did very high risk, high consequence, very complex processes. Let me give you a hint. They had not called me in because everything had been going well. They had several very significant incidents that involved employee fatalities. And they wanted to try to fix the problem. So among the many fixes one of them was helping their employees understand how to make high-risk decisions. So I went and I toured like I did here, and I interviewed people there like I did here. And one of those people I interviewed everybody from like the newest people all the way through the most senior people. And one of those people I interviewed was somebody who'd been on the job in that factory for about 6 months. And I asked that person, how long do you think it will take before you acquire expert knowledge about the processes of this factory? And all the things that can go wrong, and all the things you would need to know and do if things went wrong. And he'd been on the job about 6 months, and he paused and he said, probably about another 6 months. And it was just about everything I could do to keep my jaw from dropping and hitting the tabletop. That this person would think that with just 1 year of experience, that they would acquire all the expert knowledge needed to know everything about this very complex operation. Now, I wasn't there to judge, I wasn't there to criticize, I just took my notes. And he just kept talking and I just kept taking notes. But where this really starts to have real meaning for me is when I interviewed some of the most senior factory workers in this company, the ones who've been on the job for 20, 25, 30 years. And when I interviewed them, I didn't ask them the same question I asked that new person. I asked them a similar question, only I inverted it because I figured they'd already been around long enough to have expert knowledge. So I asked those senior people, how long had you worked here before you felt like you had acquired expert knowledge? You know, how long did it take before you felt like you really got to where you have an expert knowledge about what's going on here? You know what most of them said? Not there. Not there yet. Not there yet. 25 years, not there yet. 30 years, not there yet. Still learning. Too many things to learn. Too many things that can go wrong. Too many ways that I could be tricked or fooled by what's happening in this plant. Not there yet. And what I got to observe was two spectrums of self-assessment. The new employee was what I would have termed, not to them, because I don't want to label them and judge them and be mean to them, but what I would have put the label on this person is inexperienced, yet overconfident. And that's dangerous. You know, that young person didn't know. Now, they weren't a young person. They were young on the job, new on the job. That new person didn't know what they didn't know about how many ways things could go wrong. And then on the other end of the spectrum were those who had adopted a learner's mindset. Their mindset that the learning never ends. You can never know it all about what happens here and the way things can go wrong. And then I interviewed a lot of people that were in between on that spectrum. So how long does it take to acquire expert knowledge? Here's what the experts would tell us with all the research they've done. And this research has been going on for probably close to 30 years. On average, it takes the person about 10 years of experience to acquire expert knowledge, or about 10,000 hours of practical application of the job experience itself, either learning or on the job, doing the job. Now, for some people, that can take more time. For some people, it can take less time. You can actually accelerate your learning and get 10 years of experience sooner or quicker if you adopt a learning mindset. If every day you come to work, in fact, one of the senior people that I interviewed said something that has really stuck with me. He said, I have but one goal, and that is every day I leave work, I want to be smarter than when I arrived at the start of the shift. And they set out to learn something new or different every single day they work. Now, you set that mindset, and you can accelerate your learning by ensuring that you are advancing your knowledge instead of just, punching the clock and putting in your time. So you've got this picture on your mental sketch pad. Here I just put a little link just to give us something to look at. Got the picture on the mental sketch pad. It is then snapshotted or screenshotted and sent up into memory to do a file search. It's going to search your entire long-term memory database. Basically what it's trying to say is, what's the solution to this problem I'm dealing with? I'm suddenly in a period of high vulnerability. What solutions do I have stored in memory? What knowledge, what training, what experiences? And it's going to search your entire long-term memory database. This is a huge, huge search. The capacity of the average person's long-term memory, and that's all of us, we're average people. The average person's long-term memory capacity is estimated to be about 10 times all the information stored on the internet. Accessing that information is a whole other issue. The average person can only consciously access about 5% of their long-term memory database, which means 95% of everything you have ever experienced in life is completely outside of your awareness. You have no conscious recall of it. Think of all those driving experiences stored in your subconscious, all those scripts that you can't recall, but they're in there. So if you could just get a pen and paper and write down everything you could ever remember, which would almost be an impossible task, it would only fit in that little gray 5% wedge. And everything else of life's experiences is in the subconscious memory store. So the brain is going to search both databases, the 5% and the 95%. And if it finds, while it's doing that search, it finds a match that is part of the 95% that's outside of your conscious awareness, it can trigger the sixth sense. The sixth sense is the only sense that resides inside the brain and sends its information outward. The other 5 senses are all on the outside of the brain and send their information inward. Your eyes are on the outside of your brain, they send information in. Your ears are on the outside of your brain, they send information in. The sixth sense is on the inside of the brain and sends information out. It works in the opposite fashion of the other 5 senses. In this sixth sense that resides inside the brain and sends its information outward, it has a name. We call it intuition. The definition of intuition is strange. Intuition means knowing without knowing how you know. Well, how do you know if you don't know how you know? Intuition does not come to us in the form of knowledge. It comes to us in the form of a feeling. You just feel like you know, but you don't know why you know. Intuition comes to us predominantly in 4 different forms. First, you might have the hair stand up on the back of your neck. You might have goosebumps go down your arm. You might have some people would describe their spidey senses start to tingle. And all of a sudden you're on a heightened level of vigilance, a heightened level of alertness. You don't really know why, but all of a sudden you're looking around, listening around like something's not right. Or you might have the voices inside of your head talking to you. We all have an internal voice called self-speak. We talk to it, it talks to us. Your internal voice might be telling you, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be doing this. You should be doing this. It doesn't tell us why. It just gives us the advice. The third possible way that you could experience intuition is to get an impending feeling of doom. A feeling that all of a sudden that your time on this planet is about to end. You are at the finality of life. And to get that feeling that if I stay here, this is how it's going to end for me. Now, the most common form of intuition, while any of the 3 of these can happen, the most common form of intuition is something that is called the gut feeling. That knotted up, squeezed up feeling in our gut telling us that something isn't right. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. Or I should be doing that instead of this. There's an emotional control center in your brain that when your brain finds a match in the subconscious, it sends a message over to the emotional control center, which then sends impulses down nerves that travel down your spinal cord and split off and come into your abdomen. And when you get that knotted up, squeezed up feeling in your gut, that's your brain matching subconscious knowledge, trying to alert and warn you to the potential for danger. If only we would trust it. Your brain is your intuition is your brain's single most powerful red flag warning system, designed to alert you to the potential for danger. And what makes it so powerful is how big that database is. Everything in that green space, your brain can access subconsciously and use intuition to guide our thinking and our decision making. If only we would trust it. There are some problems with intuition. The first is the difficulty we have with trusting it. It's a lot easier to trust your conscious knowledge, to say, well, I know this to be the answer because I remember this because I just had training on it last week, and I remember in that class I learned this and this and this, and you recite all the facts and the data and all the proof and all the evidence, and therefore that's the basis of your decisions, versus saying, I'm just going to trust my gut, I'm just going to trust my feelings. It's very difficult to trust intuition. I know that because for the biggest part of my life, I trudged right over my intuition. On the job as a first responder, off the job in life. I didn't understand where intuition came from, where the gut feeling came from. I didn't understand that the voices talking to me in those high-risk situations were trying to help me out. And I trudged right over it. The best example I could give you is not an emergency situation. It was a situation where we were hiring some new firefighters. And what we had is the applications, we had the resumes, we had a questionnaire that the candidates had filled out, and we reviewed all those, and we narrowed the pile of candidates from 100 down to about 20 that we were going to interview. And we brought those 20 in to interview them. And we had a little panel of people that were going to sit on in the interview. So let's just say the panel are the 4 of you and me. And we brought those candidates in, and we had all their information, and we interviewed them. And one candidate had a pristine application, an amazing resume, awesome answers on their survey, on their questionnaire. And they interviewed what I would probably now classify as nearly flawless in every aspect of the answers that they gave. And when that person left, and we closed the door, and the conversation was, well, what do you think? First person said, hire him. Hire him. Hire him. Hire him. And they got to me, and I said, don't hire him. And everybody on the panel went, what? Why? Did you look at the application? Yeah. Did you look at the resume? Did you look at their written response? Yeah. Did you listen to their? Yes, I heard the interview. It was amazing. Why would you say not hire them? And I said, I don't know. I just have a feeling that we would be making a mistake. I can't put my finger on anything. I couldn't say, well, it's this on the resume or this answer they gave in the interview. I didn't know why. I just knew. Well, as it went, I was clearly outnumbered 4-1, and I was the fire chief, so I had the final say on who we hired and who we didn't. But I deferred to the group, and I said, if the 4 of you think we should hire, even though I don't think we should, then we're going to hire him. And we hired him. And the next 3 years were misery. We should have never hired him. That person ended up being a science project. It was amazing how much dysfunction they brought to the organization, how negatively they impacted others, how they just couldn't behave. They just didn't know how to play well in the sandbox. They couldn't behave. And as much as we tried to teach them and coach them and counsel them, nothing we tried would work. And it ended up at about 3 years, they left. Just short of being fired, they left. Now, what I wanted to do so bad was go back to my hiring committee and say, I told you so, but I didn't have evidence. I didn't have anything to say why I knew. So I just kept my mouth shut. I mean, I didn't know why I knew. I just knew. So that, along with a series of some other things that happened, taught me, especially in those high-risk environments, to trust my intuition, to listen to my gut feel in those voices and when the hair stands up on my neck. That's my biggest database of knowledge, trying to guide me to make good decisions. Now, there's another problem with intuition, and that is your intuition can be wrong. Whoa, wait a minute. Rich, I thought you were trying to talk me into trusting my intuition. I am. But now you're telling me it can be wrong. It can. So maybe I shouldn't trust it. That's right, maybe you shouldn't. But you're telling me I should trust it. That's right, you should. Mm-hmm. Well, how can I trust it and not trust it at the same time? You can't. And I think this is where you could raise your hand and say, I'm confused. Hello. Oh, can I phone a friend? You're not making sense anymore. You've gone off the deep end. Let me give you my best advice. If you have what I would call expert knowledge, and you have to decide for yourself when you acquire expert knowledge for the work that you do. But if you have expert knowledge, and you find yourself in a period of high vulnerability, high risk, high consequence, time compressed, changing conditions, and your intuition is telling you something is bad, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be doing this, trust that intuition. It's trying to save your life. So when should you not trust it? There's kind of a side of intuition that I wish we could just erase out of memory, but we can. Sometimes we don't get a bad feeling. Sometimes we get a blissful feeling, a feeling of euphoria, a feeling of everything is just going so wonderfully. If you get that feeling, don't trust it. If you're in a high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environment, a POHV situation, and you think everything is wonderful, don't trust that feeling. Look for your proof and your evidence and your facts and your data to validate that things are going as well as you think they are. Maybe they are, but don't blindly trust that blissful form of intuition. Let me give you an example of this. You come home from a busy day. You sit in your favorite, most comfortable chair in the house. You kick up your feet. You have a cold Fresca sitting on the end table. You open up the newspaper. You're reading the newspaper. And off in some other part of the house, the kids are ripping it up, laughing, fighting, carrying on. And from behind the newspaper, you smile, because life's pretty good. And then it gets quiet. What's that mean? Trouble. They're up to something. And you fold up the newspaper and you set it down and you get out of your favorite, most comfortable chair and you go down the hallway looking for proof and evidence and you turn into the room where they were just playing and there they are, sitting there reading a book to each other like a couple little cherubs. Ah, it could happen. What you're more likely to observe is maybe they're trying to piece together a broken lamp with some yarn and scotch tape. Now, I share that story to ask this question. How do we as parents know that quiet means trouble? It's not in the parenting handbook. So how do we know that? Where did we learn that?
You were a kid before.
Our experience from when we were a kid. You don't even like to think about this. But when you were little and you were with your siblings or your friends and you were ripping it up and something went wrong and you got quiet and then somebody authority figure appeared in your doorway and then you got into trouble, your little 7-year-old mind went, I better remember that. Someday I'm going to be the big person. And there may be other little people running around and maybe they're going to get quiet and when they do it could mean trouble and I better remember that. And you tuck that lesson away. And here's my lesson for you. In a period of high vulnerability, quiet could mean trouble. Investigate, look for facts and data and proof and evidence that things are going as well as you think they are. They might be. They might be reading a book to each other. But if they're not, you want to know that. All right. The foundation, perception, the walls, understanding. Now we got to put a roof on the house. The roof is the most complex part of situational awareness. And that is the ability to anticipate what's going to happen before it happens. The ability to predict the future. It makes the first two easy by comparison. Since 2007, Situational Awareness Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and over 70,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, public transportation operators, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and many, many more. If you work in a high-risk, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we're here to help improve your safety and your survival, and to help you accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love you.
Welcome to Chief Miller. Chief Miller operates the largest social media page dedicated to the men and women of the fire service from around the world. Check him out on Instagram at Chief_Miller. Find him on Twitter at Chief_Miller. And check out the website where you can find Chief Miller Apparel at chiefmillerapparel.com.
I would like to take a moment to thank and honor the companies, organizations, agencies, and departments that have hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters training for their team members. The Rogue Interagency Training Association in Medford, Oregon, the Shoreline Fire Department in Washington State, and Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta.
I think Rich's ability to connect with any crowd, that's a gift that he has, and it's easily transferable.
This is the second or third time that I've heard him speak. There's some teeth to the information that he brings.
It's been really good. Good mixes. He knows when to throw in a joke here and there to get you back involved.
Some tools. I'm a new lieutenant, so very, very interesting. And some of these things I can take back to the station and use with some of the new firefighters I have on my crew.
Something to get you thinking about your job more, big picture type stuff. I've seen him before. A good review for sure.
I have heard him before, yes. After he speaks, there's usually an enlightenment because now they're more aware of what's going on around them and what they're experiencing as they're responding to calls.
He's very, very knowledgeable. I'm enjoying it so far.
And that intuition, that's a big one. The video that he just showed up here, we're getting a lot out of this. I think this is a really good seminar, especially for new people and old. Well, I think it's very informative. This talk gives us more ammunition to do all three.
They're relatable to what we have experienced or very well could experience, so he makes it easy to let the knowledge sink in.
I mean, it's awesome. A lot of stories you can usually relate to yourself and calls you have been on, aha moment. Like, he just helps you focus on picking out the right things. It's awesome. It's a refresher and keeps my eyes open. It's good stuff.
If people listen to the message that he has, it's an incredible message delivered by a very compassionate person. Strategy and tactics are going to always change. Situational awareness it doesn't change. It's always there.
He's got some good stories to tell, and he's very thorough with his stories, and it's interesting listening to him.
Very clear speaker, and he talks on our level because he's been there, he's been in the trenches. I think he's doing well, and I'm looking forward to the second half.
If you're interested in attending one of our programs, here's where we're going to be coming up. January 3 through 9, back at the Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. January 12th at the Quad County Fire Chiefs Association Seminar in Lewiston, Idaho. January 15 to 16 at the Pearland Fire Department in Texas. January 23rd, the Redwood City Fire Department in California. January 26th, the Toledo Fire Department in Ohio. February 2 to 3, the Missouri Winter Fire School in Columbia, Missouri. February 22nd, the West Virginia Emergency Services Conference in Pipestem, West Virginia. February 25, the Grand Rapids Fire Department in Minnesota. February 26th, the Hibbing Fire Department in Minnesota. February 27th, the Mountain Iron Fire Department in Minnesota. February 28th, the Lutsen Fire Department in Minnesota. Then March 5 to 6, Baytown Fire Department in Texas. March 7, the TEACS Product Development Center Technology Conference in College Station, Texas. March 12th, the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute's National Fire Service Staff and Command Program in Towson, Maryland. And March 25 to April 3 at the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard in Oahu, Hawaii. To see the locations of all the upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events, just head over to the SAMatters.com website and click on the blue box on the right side of the web page labeled Live Training Dates. If you're interested in hosting a program, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage and I'll give you a call. If you want to become part of the SAMatters community of learners, there's a couple of ways you can do that. Just click on the show notes to see how you get connected with us through our newsletter membership, podcast subscribers, YouTube subscribers, and how to follow us on the social media channels of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 245 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to Santa for stopping by last week and sharing those 12 tips for improving situational awareness. We had a lot of fun with you in the studio. Thank you to our awesome sponsors, Midwest Fire and Chief Miller. Thank you to all the companies, agencies, and organizations that have hosted Situational Awareness Matters training programs. Thank you to all the organizations that have hosted live, virtual, internet-based training events, where I come to the organization live via the internet to train your entire team. Thank you to the more than 2,500 students and graduates of the highly acclaimed Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. Remember, the enrollment special for the Academy ends on December 31st. Most importantly, though, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SAMatters mission. May the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.